Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Janna mini-rework that is currently on the PBE. It was actually slated for the most recent PBE patch, but has been pulled instead for future testing, so it actually makes a lot of sense to talk about this nowadays. I want to kind of go through the changes and give my first few thoughts and impressions. This is intended to be a similar scope change to the Lucian and Sona mini-reworks that were intended to sort of revitalize some of these older champions and fix some of the outstanding gameplay issues that they currently have. Now, I usually don't talk about changes like the Janna changes because they are very dry. Unlike changes like the Lucian change, where he got the bonus magic damage on hit after being empowered by somebody, or Sona, where she has a brand new passive to play with, the Janna changes are very number-based, and they're very mechanically not interesting. And I normally shy away from these because it's not very exciting to talk about. There's a lot of having to break down individual changes and talk about numbers, which a lot of times I feel like aren't very exciting or interesting, but I did want to give this a try because I do feel like it's going to do a lot of good for Janna. So if you guys want to see me do more of these kind of individual stat breakdowns, you'll have to let me know down in the comment section below. Besides that, let's go ahead and hop into it. I will have the full change list linked in the description below, so you guys can take a look at it for yourself if you're interested in reading it. Now first, the goal of this rework is to change Janna so as to drain power from her W and auto-attack harass gameplay in lane, and funnel that power into the more fun and interactive parts of her kit, which are her E and her Q. These changes are intended to be power neutral. This means that Janna should ideally be in the exact same balance state that she is following these changes that she currently is right now. So ideally this isn't a buff or a nerf, but we'll have to see, right? It doesn't always hit the numbers exactly right the first time around, so if these do end up being not in a great spot, right, we'll buff or nerf accordingly. The biggest changes here are, of course, that Janna is actually losing a couple of outstanding mechanics that were added to her kit a while back to give her some degree of flexibility and some degree of extra power. She's losing the bonus magic damage on hit based on her movement speed, and she's also losing the E cooldown reduction every time she slows or knocks up an enemy champion. These are mechanics that I feel like were sort of dated on the kit and didn't have an awful lot of gameplay behind them, and I really don't feel like they were doing much for the overall design, so their removal I don't think is a big deal, but those are going to be going away with the mini-rework. The other thing that Riot are doing is nerfing down Janna's passive by a little bit. Formerly, Janna always benefited from Tailwind's bonus movement speed. Now she only gains it while moving towards her allies. In addition, her base attack range has been reduced to 500. Now, these initially seem like some pretty big changes, but a lot of the power that Janna has lost has basically been returned to her in the form of regular base stats to compensate. Janna's base movement speed has been increased to 330 from 315, and her base AD has gone up to 52 from 46, which is a pretty big spike there, and now scales with up to 3 per level as opposed to 1.5 per level. Now, this means that Janna is not actually going to be hurting too bad for the bonus magic damage from her W. Obviously, not doing mixed damage means that it's a little bit easier to itemize against her damage. For example, Ninja Tabby are going to be more effective at blocking it out. But generally speaking, her auto-attack damage should be in the exact same state as it is previously. The other thing is the base movement speed change on Janna actually means that with also the rework to the W percent movement speed, Janna is going to be generally moving faster on PBE than she is currently on Live, even counting in Live's current 8% bonus movement speed from her passive. So overall, this is going to be a bigger change for Janna and actually a net buff once you get W to rank 5. So I do actually quite like this, and it does mean that a lot more of the power is in Janna's base kit as opposed to needing abilities and needing rank ups in order to actually access that power. Moving on to some of the straight buffs here in the form of the Q. Now, Q's mana cost has been decreased at its later ranks, the minimum range has been increased, and the maximum range has been slightly increased. This doesn't mean a whole lot of anything in general right now. Your ability has a slightly bigger range, but the important thing here is that the travel time on Q has also been decreased by 1/4 of a second. This means that not only is your Q traveling further, it's also taking less time to get there overall, which means that it is traveling significantly faster than it is on Live. This means that Janna has a better ability to land quick tap Qs on enemy champions, where ordinarily that's exceedingly hard to do unless they're directly on top of you, and it also means that a charged Q is going to travel significantly faster and be an easier ability to hit overall. The damage has also been very slightly increased. That's not that big of a deal. It does mean that the Q is a slightly more attractive ability as a first max, but it's not that relevant. And it also does 80% damage to minions to prevent mid lane Janna from being a thing. So some pretty spicy changes to the Q, and especially in conjunction with the changes to W, I actually think Janna has some fun combos here. W has had its slow duration increased by a full second, and its damage has also been increased at all ranks. Now, this initially seems like it's contrary to Riot's opinion, right, that W needed to be weaker overall. But the biggest thing that Riot did with Janna's W is they normalized its cooldown to 12 seconds at all ranks from an 8 to 6 second cooldown. This means that Janna will have this ability a lot less often than she normally did, but it means that every time she presses W, it's a much more impactful ability. It does more damage, and the slow duration is much longer. Because of this as well, and because of the changes to Q, this means that Janna can slow an enemy champion, use her Q, and actually let it charge for a little bit longer because of the 3-second slow, and then use it in order to get a slightly increased knock-up and damage on the enemy champion. So I'm actually a big fan of these changes then, because now W, as opposed to being a spammable, damaging ability that applies Comet, that applies Scorch, that your enemy team can't do anything about, Janna is now empowered to look to make better plays with something like W charge Q, and maybe set her allies up in an offensive use case as opposed to just sitting back and being an enchanter bot, which is quite nice. I touched on it earlier, but the passive movement speed from W has also been increased at all ranks, which means that Janna will be moving faster overall, even if you only put 1 point in your W. 8% movement speed versus 6% on live is just better. Finally, onto the E. There was the change where you no longer get the E cooldown reduction whenever you slow or knock up an enemy champion, but you don't need it anymore because the cooldown has been decreased from 16 to 12 seconds all the way down to 15 to 9. That means that especially with all of the ability haste you can get out of support itemization, you're really able to slap a ton of shields on allied champions because the base cooldown of this ability is much better. This also means that Janna is less reliant on having to use the rest of her kit in order to maximize her E uptime. She just has E more often, so if you are playing her as sort of an enchanter protector bot, you're more empowered to do that with these current changes. The other thing changed about the E is that the time before the shield decays has been increased by a half second from 0.75 seconds to 1.25. Now this is another relevant change here because one of the issues I think I had with Janna's shield decay is that it took very little time for it to start decaying. By the time your ally has got the shield, it has recognized they have the shield and has processed, oh, I have bonus AD because Janna shielded me, time to go in. It's already started to decay and they have less opportunity to use it at its full strength. A full second and a quarter means that your ally has all of that time to think about the shield, to recognize what it means for them, and then has the ability to actually go in and fight, and still has that shield at full strength in order to actually make use of it for a longer period of time. Effectively, this means that the shield's duration has been increased by half second, which means that there is more opportunity for that shield to get value by blocking damage, or to get value by granting your ally bonus AD. The other fun thing that this is doing is it means that the shield is stronger in a reactive use case. If you press the shield slightly early, right, in the use case of, oh, I know there's damage coming, I'm going to shield my ally now, there very much shows the possibility that the shield starts decaying before the damage has actually landed, and therefore you're getting less value overall out of that shield. This change is very small, it is, but I do feel like there's enough here that it overall nets a buff. So I'm actually a big fan of these changes. I do think it removes Janna's ability to be that sort of W spam poke bot that just wasn't very exciting or interesting. Like, even if it was strong, right? And even if you're like, oh, this is so fun, I get damage for free and my enemy can't do anything about it, I have to think over a long period of time, right? Playing dozens of games on Janna, you would eventually get bored, especially when you realize that this is sort of the only viable strategy for Janna, right? A lot of her other abilities were nerfed in order to make room for the fact that she has this W strategy. These changes, I don't think, kill the W strategy, but I do think that they severely weaken it to the point that Emax or Qmax first is going to make a lot more sense, and I think in general it's going to make Janna feel like a more dynamic champion to play and sort of update her to bring her more into line with the current state of League of Legends. So I'm a big fan of these changes, but you'll have to let me know what you think of them down in the comment section below, especially if you're a Janna main. Let me know what your opinions are down in the comments, and again, let me know what you think of these kind of videos. I know this was pretty dry and a lot of talking through individual numbers changes, and that's not very exciting, but if you want to see more of this, let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.